Hello everyone, this is Lana, and today I'm going to be doing my review slash retrospective of All Stars 3, and I'm not the most sure about my opinion on this season. It's not a bad season at all, but I would be lying if I said that it's a great season either. Okay, one thing I will say is that the format of the season is definitely the best out of the three so far. It's an individual game, and there's an individual male and woman winner, and it's individual the entire season. And I really like the idea of the authority where the top three people who win the daily per gender end up in the authority, then they change it to one per gender as well. So I did like that element of it, and I have no issues with the format. I do think that the guy side is pretty stuck on a competitive side, though, as usual, they weren't the most entertaining. And the women's side definitely had some surprises with some shocking returns, but this season is notable for having a lot more Era 3 people, and you can definitely feel the difference in the vibe between the two groups. Obviously, people like Naya and Jordan make their return here, and you can definitely tell that them being so much younger caused them to not fit in with the others. And it's kind of the same thing with the energy that the likes of a Sylvia and a Kayla brought to the season as well. And obviously, Jeremy, during her limited time, kind of fit in with that group of people. And you kind of see how this specific spin-off series would change with the inclusion of some of those people, which just got worse and worse over the following two seasons. The drama wasn't really the best. Obviously, there's one very real situation between Beth and Jonay, and there's a few other random feuds like Brad and MJ and Yes and West, though I think the latter was very, very overproduced. And some of the people who were established through the first two All-Star seasons, they kind of underperform here, so it kind of seems like a passing of the torch. And with this being the last season that was automatically greenlit when the series was greenlit, it kind of seemed like it was kind of wrapping up on things just in case it didn't get renewed. But because it did get renewed, so many things were different in the following two seasons, and the season was somewhat hinting at that. Apparently, the cast is filled with everyone who has qualified for the final, completely ignoring Naya, who was DQ'd on Rivals 2, no, not Rivals 2, Battle of the Exes 2 before the final. And since then, they've rewritten history to make it seem like she made it to the final on that, which they even did with the Battle of the Eras promo. Everyone arrives to the house alone, or with their group of people, with Tina and Veronica arriving together, and they're still BFFs, though they haven't played together in almost 20 years. Ronnie has no idea what she's doing after over 2 decades. Wes, Nehemiah, and Melinda arrive together, and Wes wants to ruin the good nature of All Stars, just kind of showing how he's going to overproduce the heck out of things. And Jordan and Naya arrive together to complete his redemption. Tyler injured 3 ribs and fractured his right wrist, and his diaphragm moved a few spots after his elimination with Letarian, but he loves doing this, so he's back. The All Stars winners arrive together in Yes, Jonay, and MJ. Cynthia hasn't played in 18 years, and she's essentially a deer in headlights. Cyrus is engaged, and Naya and Jordan talk about how she never thought that she would be back in the game, where she wants to redeem herself, which Jordan does as well, and he didn't think that they would be playing this together either. I'm going to talk a bit more about this a bit later, but it's clear that this is the only reason why Naya came back to redeem Jordan. There's a lot of talk about West scaring everyone in the house, and there's a lot of focus on this. So the male and female winner, it's an individual win, will get $500,000. The first daily is television, where there's a giant wall of lines where they have to memorize a puzzle pattern, which they have to see through the wall, and then replicating it through the other puzzle. This daily really wasn't funny or fun to watch, but Wes and Sylvia win the daily, and Cyrus and Cynthia are automatically going into elimination for getting last place. TJ mentions that the top 3 men and women form the authority to make choices, which Yes and MJ and Veronica and Kelly Ann get in for this round. The winner also gets to sabotage someone in the next daily as well, like the person who got first out of their gender, which is another twist. Mark and Nehemiah are talking about what the authority will do, and Yes is talking about making it fair, but the both of them want Jordan sent in and sent home, essentially. There is a jungle party of some sort, and Tyler has his best outfit, which, okay. Cynthia doesn't do the punk ass shit about not wanting to pick the weakest opponent, and doesn't want to make a choice either, and it's just clear how not meant for the game she really is. Tyler doesn't want to get nominated since he got second last in the daily, and even when he did well in the daily last season, he didn't speak up to his detriment, so he doesn't want that to happen here. Jordan knows that he's kind of on the outs since he doesn't really have allies in the game, and knows that West will come for him, as they didn't have the best ending on Total Madness. The authority meet up where Cynthia wants them to choose, and Yes doesn't think it's fair for the best person, i.e., Jordan, to be targeted. They all decide to work with the bottom two, and Veronica knows that sticking her neck out for Tina will make her look bad, so Tina and Tyler are nominated. Tina and Veronica speak, and she's very upset about it, as she will fuck some shit up when she comes back, and Tyler is told about half of his room being a part of voting him in, and his feelings are hurt about this. Cynthia talks about doing the last challenge when her son was 1 and he's 19 now, and her last season was Battle of the Sexes too, so she wants something for her this time, and Cyrus wants to win for his fiancée. The elimination is Quad Brawl, where they have to start at the opposite ends of the steel cage and bring it back to the bell. Tina gets redemption for her last elimination, where she literally just stood there, and she beats Cynthia here, where Cyrus beats Tyler. There is talk about the stars being added to your shirt after taking someone out in an elimination, and I'll have more power at some point in reference to the final. It was nice to see Cynthia after 18 to 19 years, and she still is funny. Like, I remember her being in her older seasons. Now that I actually watched her history before watching this season, I do understand a lot more about her than I did when I watched this season the first time before watching those older seasons. But it's really clear that the challenge just isn't for her, but she's still relatively iconic. Tyler had another early bird here, and the momentum from his winning seasons decreasing here again is very disappointing. I don't think we need to see Tyler again, though he's still relatively likable and inoffensive enough, though it seems more and more likely that the consistency with him is really not there, especially in a positive direction. Cyrus and Tina feel good about their victories, and Janae is braiding MJ's hair, where they're talking about sabotaging people, and Melinda is kind of nervous about being attached to Wes in the game due to his reputation. Everyone is planning on how they are going to use their sabotage, or they're predicting how they're going to use it, and Sylvia is thinking about Kellyanne and Kendall being the easy targets. Mark speaks to his mother on the video call, who has stage 4 cancer that has passed to her bone, and him competing helps her spirit up, so that's one of the reasons why he's on this. Melinda's ankle is bothering her as she rolled her ankle 4 times during the running portion of the final last season, and they filmed this season about 2 months after the final last season, which is way too soon of a turnover, though I heard that she pretended that she wasn't injured so she could get an appearance fee for this, and production needs to be more vigilant when it comes to checking up on their cast and to kind of put their foot down with certain things. And honestly, I'm gonna move on. The daily is out of reach where they have to get their key to a box high above the water as they have to swing to get it, then open it to the puzzle. Wes and Sylvia sabotage Jordan and Kellyanne, and the daily is pretty solid actually. We learn that Derek is about to get married, and Yes and Kendall winning the daily, with Jordan and Brad, and Johnny and Kayla also getting into the authority too. Latyrian and Tina are going into elimination for getting last. We have Yes creating an issue with Wes, and Jordan rubs it in Wes's face about his sabotage essentially failing. Tina just tells the authority that she does not want her friends in there, i.e., Melinda and Veronica, but she doesn't give them a name and threatens them too. Mark feels safe because he knows everyone, and the Tyrion doesn't care about being in an elimination, but he essentially just doesn't want to go against a black man, just from the names that he listed. And Tina and Jamie tell Jonay to not let that loser, Tina, tell her what to do, since Tina didn't win the opportunity to make that choice. The authority meet up, and the only thing that they have is that neither nominee wants to send in their friends, and essentially the authority chooses to save one person, and Kayla wants to send They rolled Austin into elimination. Yes is annoyed with Wes's gameplay, and Brad wants to save Mark, which Jordan essentially refuses. Melinda and Mark end up being nominated, and everyone is shocked with Mark getting nominated. We essentially have repeated eliminations here, where Melinda and Tina are facing off, just like they did last season, and Mark and Tina are facing off like they did on season 1. Melinda quits because her ankle is too fucked up, and she could barely walk down the stairs to the elimination ground. So the men compete in the elimination Lights Out, which is a long endurance competition where they are attached to a bar and they have to shut off a light across. History does repeat itself here with Mark being Laterian. Melinda definitely should not have done the season, and I think that 2 seasons being filmed way too close together was an issue, where apparently a few other people were still recovering from their injuries last season. I don't really have much else to say about her, since that was her only content, and it was annoying that she did the season for an appearance fee where she could have just recovered, but yeah, whatever. Letterian definitely had a disappointing run here, and he didn't have much screen time, but I do think that the early boot kind of harmed him with casting in the future, especially with the casting choices changing to more newer people in the following seasons, but he got 2 somewhat redeemable seasons beforehand at least. Kendall and Kellyanne are getting close, and there's talk about opening a business together between the two of them, which is nice. And the Treehouse Alliance consists of Kayla, Sylvia, Tina, Veronica, Jamie, Ronnie, and Derek, as they all share a room. And Nehemiah doesn't feel the greatest about his chances, since 2 of his allies are gone, and he can't talk to Wes openly because of their close friendship and Wes's reputation. MJ and Janae are together regarding alliances, and people know that they're close after last season, where the two of them want to make a deal with the devil that is Wes. Yes and Wes have a coffee date about the sabotage, and the conversation is very awkward, where Yes asks Wes for the sabotage and he rejects it. Yes calls out his gameplay that rubs him the wrong way, as the two of them are just seemingly not feeling one another right now. The daily is playing dirty, where there's a mud pit challenge that we've seen it many times in all of Era 4, which is always fun. Yes and Kendall choose Wes and MJ when it came to their sabotage, as Kendall is trying and failing to balance all sides, which just pisses MJ and Janae off, since Janae and Kendall are roommates. It is just as fun in the daily that this daily has been in the actual Era 4 seasons. And the Treehouse Alliance does expose themselves here with who they are working with and who they are targeting. Kayla, Sylvia, and Janae are in the authority in that order, and Brad, Derek, and Jordan are in the authority in that order, with Veronica and MJ, who's still injured from last season, going directly into elimination. Nehemiah wants to beat, yes, Mr. Integrity's ass for getting too aggressive, and Tina ends up injuring her finger during the challenge. MJ and Janae asked Kendall why she did the sabotage, and despite them playing together over the last few seasons, Janae would rather her being given the sabotage instead of MJ, which is just so ridiculous. And honestly, it really doesn't help their case. And of course, she cares a lot about him being sabotaged. There's a 70s party, and Wes is politicking for Yes to get thrown in, where he even asks the grouse Jordan, those are Wes's words, to get him in. The authority mentions that they want to give Veronica whomever she wants as an opponent, and Kellyanne and Kendall is tired of playing it nice, where the others are playing dirty. MJ wants to go against Cyrus, despite the pitch to send Yes in, and this gets around the house, where Brad wants to send in Yes, who he has never, Yes hasn't seen an elimination in his life, so that's why Brad's kind of leaning that way, and he sees Yes as beatable. Tina went to the hospital and she broke her hand, so she has to leave. I'm going to discuss her a little bit later. The authority meets up where the men do not want to throw in Cyrus, and either Kellyanne or Kendall is getting voted in here. Cyrus and Kendall are voted in, and she is tired of the cattiness of the younger All Stars not respecting the older All Stars. Jamie gets a call from her mother, who tells her that her father's health is declining, so obviously Jamie decides to leave. Tina was performing pretty poorly in the season, but she had a solid line, so it really sucks that she left based on an injury, though it's another disappointing All Stars performance from her. Jemmy didn't get much screen time, where obviously she leaves early due to her father's health, which is understandable. He passed away a few months ago as I'm recording this, and she mentioned that she has no interest in returning. So I'm kind of fine with this being her last. And this is far from Tina's last season. Due to two women leaving, the women's elimination is cancelled, but MJ and Cyrus compete in Wait Up, where they have to throw bags in a basket in the air and to sink it down to reveal a wall that they have to smash to get through. It's fine enough elimination, but MJ does win over Cyrus. It is another disappointing All-Star season for Cyrus, and his stock went down, despite being in the best shape of his life, which was consistently commented on, and winning an elimination this season. He's always a fun person to have around, but unfortunately things won't get better for him regarding his All-Stars journey. Everyone is having fun on their day off, and Brad feels reassured because MJ made the wrong choice to voting Cyrus in, and he's going to sabotage MJ from here on out. And this is the start of their, I don't know if feud's the word, but their back and forth, at least gameplay wise. Darrell mentions that he's been throwing challenges, and Naya finally wants to settle the sexual attraction and tension that she and Jordan have had for the last decade since their real world season, and Kayla and Sylvia are very overconfident about the chances. And Kelly Ann tells Kendall that she went rogue with the MJ sabotage, and it bit them, i.e., Kelly and Kendall, in the ass. MJ, Mark, and Darrell joke about him having to do another height challenge, and MJ hopes that he won't be sabotaged again, which, yeah, we'll see how that goes. Due to Jemmy and Tina, mainly Jemmy, leaving, Beth is brought into the game to keep the numbers intact, and she needs this money in a few years. Sorry, she needs this money because she has a few years before retirement, and no one but maybe Nehemiah is happy to have her back. So Kendall is hoping that this could cause the OGs to take over the game. They are all in teams of three, and the daily is high stakes, where they're going to be 150 feet in the air, and they have to solve a math equation at the end of the plank, and whomever solves it gets to drop the other two, and the first one to fall will go into elimination. Kendall and MJ are sabotaged once again, and Janae definitely feels a way about it. Overall, the daily is decent enough for the type of challenge it is, with Brad, Mark, and MJ getting in the authority for the men, and Kayla, Janae, and Veronica getting in the authority for the women. Joel refuses to do the challenge, so he's automatically sent into elimination, and it's the exact same with Beth, and it's crazy that she did the exact same thing 2 seasons later. Nehemiah is not happy that Beth is in the house since she's a walking target, despite them actually being good friends outside of the house. And there's still that awkwardness with Beth wherever she goes. Kendall refuses to get railroaded by the young woman, and Beth agrees with this, but all the vet women aren't together, which is weird since Naya isn't included in the Treehouse Alliance despite they being around the same time. Joelle and Mark talk about how Jordan and Wes are the biggest threats, and it seems like they both want Jordan in without actually saying it. They're talking around it. Veronica and Beth have a conversation about how they did not like one another on the Inferno 2, but their beef was almost 2 decades ago. The two of them they have a shared confessional here where they end up arguing in the confessional about how Beth wanted camera time and attention, and Beth essentially called Veronica out for having threesomes in front of the camera, so pot meet kettle. This was a really great moment. Veronica rants about Beth not giving her anything in the deal and not caring about the game, and we have Jordan and I cuddling in bed where they are fooling around with one another. The authority meets up and Mark is really pushing Jordan since he was actively cheering for Literian against him in the elimination, and Brad wants to save his friend Wes, where it's obviously one of Kellyanne or Kendall are going in, and Kendall has a weak conversation with MJ and Janae to save her right before the meeting ends up happening. Kendall and Jordan are sent into elimination, and he isn't surprised at all, and we see Wes campaigning to Mark about it in a flashback. Kendall is over them lying about not wanting to do this when it was clearly a part of their plan the entire time. Anaya is getting very emotional about her protection, maybe going home, and their bond is deep. And I guess this was foreshadowing as to how she'll react a few episodes later down the line. The elimination is Steamroller, where they're in the steel barrel and they have to push the opposite direction to get it on their side. Beth easily beats Kendall, and despite Doral having more weight and being in the elite initially, Jordan out endorses and outtakes him in a very impressive manner while just talking shit to kind of get to Doral. And Doral ends up quitting the elimination and he ends up being pulled in stretchers due to his quads giving up on him. And it's just so weird to see him like this. It seems like this is the end of Kendall's Underdark arc here and her time on the show, and she started losing more and more steam as each All Star season took place. I know her health has gotten a bit worse since the season, and with the casting trends changing over the two most recent seasons, I feel almost certain that this will be her last season. Darrell really didn't have much screen time on the season, and he apparently almost didn't do it because losing twice in second place really took a toll on him. The elimination is definitely memorable, though seeing him leave like that was definitely odd and kind of sucked. Obviously, this wasn't and isn't the last we will see of him on the show. Yes, does not like the evil people like Wes not playing a grown ass game in his viewpoint, and Kayla, Veronica, and Sylvia plot on Kellyanne and Beth, and Ronnie realizes that shit wasn't like this when she was playing the Gauntlet back in the day. Kellyanne and Beth are friends, and they realize that they need to work together, where Kellyanne trusts Jonay, who is glued to MJ, and Beth does not trust Jonay. All the men are talking about the Doral elimination, and Wes essentially wants to take Doral's spot with the Mark, Derek, and Brad crew, where he essentially forms a final five with them, which obviously includes Nehemiah. And this final five tier essentially causes for, yes, Jordan and MJ to be the next three out, which ends up happening, so yeah. There is no more authority at this point where only two people will be in it, which is the winners of each gender, since we're at the halfway point now. The daily is sidetracked, where they have to throw rings onto people, and whomever has five rings on it is out. And they do this until the last person left stands, and they will win. This type of challenge always exposes the allegiances, so it's interesting in that way, where we do have Kayla using his sabotage on Beth, and Brad using his sabotage against MJ again. The men essentially cheat the system where they create a lineup that will cause Mark to win, and Yes decides to throw all of his rings at Wes, despite Jordan and MJ ganging up on Brad, which is smart on them, and it just kind of just shows how Yes doesn't get the strategic element of the game. The Chias gang up on Beth, and she is pissed off that Jonay gangs up on her too, where she knew that the treehouse is going to do it, but Jonay isn't even a part of that alliance, and this ends up with Sylvia winning the daily. We learn that Kayla is living in England with Sam, who is her fiance, and we know that they get married based on ride or dies. TJ also announces that the person chosen for nomination or elimination can choose their opponent as well once they're on the floor. The treehouse is worried about being called into elimination, and we go to the club where Beth is seething. MJ tells Mark that he will call out Brad if he's in the elimination, and Beth speaks to Mark and Sylvia, where she wants to choose Kayla or Janae, and they ask why Janae. Beth mentions that it's because she's cheating on her husband with MJ. Mark and Sylvia's face says it all, but it's not that they're surprised, but it's because she brought it up on camera. Janae watches and hears the conversation from afar, so she decides to sit right beside Beth and ask them what they're talking about, so she clearly knows what they're talking about. And it's weird to see Janae like this since she's the opposite of confrontational. Beth mentions that she does not like the way Janae plays the game. She is very shady based on a lot of things, and Janae corrects her name, mentioning that she wants to take Beth's star. She then walks away and tells MJ that Beth is spreading that they are having an affair, which they both deny on camera once they're asked about it in the confessionals. Okay, so this definitely crossed a line, but I don't think Beth made this up, and this came out of nowhere. Whenever the cast is commenting on it, whether it's on the show or at certain events or online, they never deny it. But they mention that personal stuff should be brought up, and I feel confident that the All Star 2 cast was gossiping amongst this about this amongst themselves, and it got to Beth. I don't know if MJ and Jenny are having an affair, and I'm not saying that they're having an affair, but there's a lot of smoke when it comes to the fire. Brad is annoyed that he is in the crosshairs because of this plan where he would have won the derby otherwise, and MJ wanting to face him is definitely a possibility. So Brad calls Wes into the room to mention that he should not be in danger, and Brad would have won had this not happened. Wes knows that Brad is saying that he wants Wes to volunteer in the game since Brad lost his job during COVID, which I believe he mentioned last season as well, and Brad doesn't want to leave with nothing. Mark and Sylvia nominate Wes and Janae as the both of them want to go into elimination. Janae wanting to go into elimination is something that she has never done in prior or even future seasons. She always dodges eliminations when she can, so it's odd of her. Janae chooses Beth as an opponent to send her home, and Wes chooses Yes, where they compete in knock off, where they are on each side of a wall 30 feet in the air, and they have to knock their partners off with using the ledges. Beth ends up quitting because she's claiming that Janae is getting help from MJ, and she's calling this cheating. I think Beth knew that she was losing the elimination, so she quits here. And Wes and Yes end up taunting one another during the elimination, but it ends up with Wes beating Yes. Beth really did stir up some mess, and apparently she would have been on from the beginning of the season, but she created a stalemate with production to choose either her or Tina, which is why she came in when Tina left, since Tina refused to apologize, and they chose Tina over Beth since she still wasn't over their fight on the duel. I do think she was out of line for bringing up the MJ and Janae rumors, and I'm tired of her quitting so many damn seasons. Yes, was talking about fairness, integrity, and all that, and I do think that his feud with Wes was somewhat manufactured, but mainly on Wes's end. He did have to prove himself and was on the outs, so while he is good at the physical elements, the politics and strategy really just isn't there. But at least he got onto world championships and had a deep run there at least. Everyone is happy that Beth is gone, and MJ knows that his target is huge because of winning last season, and he's been targeted a few times this season. Kellyanne speaks to her boyfriend, who is now her husband as I'm recording this, and she has metal poisoning that she has been dealing with over the last few years, and he's taking care of the dogs, as she wants to open a rescue sanctuary. MJ's knee is still injured from last season, if I recall correctly, and Brad is talking about MJ for being scared, and he doesn't know if MJ's hair is real, and he thinks that MJ is faking his injury. I feel like Brad's kind of just using the strategy of villainization, where you need to villainize someone to justify you consistently going after someone, and it's something that you see a lot in these social strategy games. The daily is stacked where they have to run a station to scratch. It's to reveal a code, which will be or unleash lock combination, and then they have to robot to a station and then stack a cylinder. And several people will be out throughout each portion of the challenge. Mark and Sylvia sabotage MJ, who asked for it from Mark, probably because he already saw it coming, and Johnny, my bad. Nehemiah is intentionally playing a low-key game this season, though I think a part of it also just has to do with Wes's presence. Derek wants to get some money for his fiancée, now wife as I'm recording this, as there is no retirement money for them. And Brad and Kelly Ann, with her ex Wes's support, win, where Sylvia sabotaged the wrong person essentially. Sylvia is annoyed with how Kellyanne celebrates and tells someone to shoot her if she acts like that in victory, which people like Nia doesn't appreciate that type of commentary. TJ announces that they won the last sabotage, meaning that the final is right around the corner, or that's what the cast is picking up from that statement, and Kellyanne rants about Sylvia's comment to Jonay and Naya, and it's clear that Sylvia's ass is in danger. Sylvia calls her stepson to the video call, and she's calling him out for his report card, which he has in her hand, so they either sent it while doing the season, or she had it before she got there. It's very weird. And her getting this content clearly meant that she's most likely going home. They have another party, and Sylvia and Kellyanne have a conversation where Sylvia gives a really poor campaign, where Kellyanne is tired of being nice to women that hate her, and she calls Sylvia out for her comment. Sylvia tries throwing Naya and Janae under the bus, and Kellyanne refuses since Naya has been nothing but nice to her. Sylvia continues to rant in the confessionals, which are pretty funny to be honest, and she and Brad do nominate MJ and Sylvia. Sylvia chooses Naya when she sees the elimination, and Naya is completely blindsided. And MJ chooses Derek. as they assume both of their opponents to be weak in puzzles. The elimination is Starstruck, where they have to free the pole from the maze in front of them, so they have to pull it around without breaking it or whatever. And then they have to shoot the ball in a hole, which Nia gets in her first shot, eliminating Sylvia. Kellyanne does congratulate Sylvia, who tells Kellyanne to fuck off, and she says she can eat her shit several times throughout the episode. Derek also pulls off the upset and beats MJ, where Janae does not react well to it, since taking out MJ is like taking her out, and she sees it as more emotional than if she was eliminated herself, which Sylvia definitely gave a few good soundbites with her hatred of Kellyanne and was playing a pretty good game until her nasty behavior kind of came back to bite her in the butt. Seeing her and Kellyanne in All Stars rivals is very interesting with this continuous storyline and how that ended up. MJ clearly did this season too soon since he got injured from last season and he had a clear target on his back. We saw more of his friendship, or whatever that is, with Johnny, and I do think the entire situation is screwed up if nothing happened, and if they were just friends, where they had these accusations against them, that honestly just kind of sucks. Johnny is not handling MJ's loss well at all, and she feels like she is alone since the treehouse are working together, and Derek also has 4 stars, so he sees himself as a huge target at this point. Jonay is making jokes about taking Derek down for taking MJ out and wearing MJ's crown from last season, and it's all just kind of weird. Veronica speaks to her girlfriend through the video call and to maintain, or she wants to win the money to maintain the house that she just bought with her girlfriend. Roni and Kellyanne have a talk where Kellyanne is trying to form a deal with Roni, but she doesn't really accept it because Roni doesn't want to piss off her alliance. The daily is Shooting Stars, which is a trivial challenge as they are attached to a slingshot, and if they answer it right, they give a strike to someone, and if you get it wrong, you get a strike, and you will be slingshot if you get 3 questions wrong. Brad sabotages himself not to piss anyone off, and Kellyanne sabotages Veronica. Veronica wins the daily for the woman, and Roni realizes she's at the bottom of her alliance, and Derek somehow wins a trivia daily for the men. Nehemiah and Derek are kind of chipping at one another, so their whatever it is continues this season. Kellyanne knows that she is in danger, and Nehemiah is also very worried due to them targeting one another since All Stars 1. Veronica speaks to Kayla, and she fell down 3 steps during their party, and Roni mentions that it's hard for her to talk game since she doesn't feel like she has anything to offer in the deals, and she talks about not speaking game just in general. They talk about the gauntlet 20 years ago, she and Veronica, but it isn't much to really base their allegiance off of at this point in the game. Kellyanne arrives and she is told by Veronica to essentially go away, though they have a conversation later. Derek wants to go after Nehemiah since he is the weakest guy left in Derek's eyes, and Mark essentially tells Derek that it's the easiest and weakest move and essentially pushes him to target Jordan, though it's clear that whomever is voted in will probably choose Mark as an opponent in the elimination. Kellyanne does make a deal with Veronica where they come to an understanding, where Veronica and Derek do nominate Jordan and Jonay for elimination. A bunch of people are surprised by this, but they are all grateful that the move was made. It's time for the elimination, where Jonay and Jordan choose Roni and Mark, with Jordan making some Herculean speech along the way about why he chose Mark. The elimination is pull your own weight, where they have to pull a weight through the heavy tower, and then when it falls, solve the puzzle. The elimination really isn't notable in my opinion, but Jonay does beat Roni after the latter had the initial lead, and Mark beats Jordan, which Naya doesn't react too well at all. It was nice to see Roni again, despite not doing the show for 18 years, and making it to the end game is cool. She admitted that she didn't do much gaming, and while I'm sure she won't be back, it's nice to have a cool life update with her, and to see how she handles a modern season. This is one of Jordan's worst seasons because he almost always makes it to the final, but he still won a few dailies and eliminations and got taken out by an OG. And this season performance would have been a good season by almost anyone else. We got a nice update on his and Naya's relationship, and it's clear that he was on his best behavior here, due to his real-world fight with Naya going viral where he made monkey noises at her, and this is during the time the demons happened and people were calling out MTV being performative, where they allegedly put him on a quiet timeout for a year or so people could forget about it. But obviously, he got back into the show, and they brought Naya as well because she was defending him hardcore online, and they did several lives about it, and it was just so. It was obvious what was being done. Of course, Derek is happy that Mark is back and tells Mark that he is showing them that they can play for 10 or so more years, and Mark might play until or when he is 60 years old. And I think Derek was like in his late 30s at the time. He's saying, okay, we can all play until we're in our early 50s if we're like Mark. That's the gist of it. Naya is talking to Nehemiah about how her source of motivation, i.e., Jordan, is gone, where they hated one another, where she said that she wished and prayed that he would die when they met all those years ago. Wow, that's horrible. But she loves him now, and she only did this season for Jordan. We know. Nehemiah talks about how he has to create his, or he created his own why, and she needs to create her own why. And he financially supports his entire family. And this is the little glimpse of the friendship that we see of them that was talked about on Battle of the Eras. Veronica ends up getting DQ due to her toe being broken right before the final. It does suck that she played a good political game this season and won a decent amount of dailies, though that's mainly due to the authority, where even the cast mentioned that she played a good game here. Probably would have made it to the final otherwise. We did see some of the original Queen V here, and she definitely does better on All Stars, where Rada Dice just reaffirms that she should stay here instead of going back to the flagship. The daily is flight pattern, where they go on a helicopter to memorize the puzzle, jump off to the water, and reenact the puzzle that they just saw. It's not really a notable daily, but Johnny and Mark end up winning the daily. Naya refuses to do the daily, and she is really not handling it well at all, as she's having this huge panic attack. We have a lot of talk about the male pairs, Mark and Derek, and Nehemiah and Wes wanting to run a final with one another. And Naya speaks to Janae about how she deserves to go into elimination for not doing the daily. And Janae understands this, since she was like that with MJ not long ago, where Kellyanne and Kayla are afraid to go into elimination. It's weird that Janae compared Naya and Jordan to herself and MJ when Jordan and Naya were actively hooking up on this season. Anyways, so Wes and Nehemiah talk about how one of them is going to go into the elimination. Anyways, and just talk about one of them volunteering, where Wes wants to go in, and Nehemiah has been laying low the entire season. He's claiming that he's throwing challenges to do that. Wes is obsessed with the stars that Derek has, and Brad knows that one of the other two people will probably choose Derek over him. Mark hears about Wes volunteering, and he isn't going to give Wes that opportunity. So he's thinking about picking Derek, who's going to be called down anyways. So Mark choosing Derek will give him the best opponent for Derek to choose himself. Wes calls Johnny Bananas in his video call, and while it's nice enough that they're friends, I don't give a fuck about this. Somehow, Kellyanne heard about Naya wanting to go in, so Kellyanne volunteers, and Kayla is also fine with going into elimination, which Janae finds all of this to be odd that the three women wants to volunteer. Janae and Mark choose Kayla and Derek so they can choose their opponents for the best chance to win, and Derek gets a Tarzan here for some reason. Kayla chooses Kellyanne, but this doesn't matter since the elimination is kindled. Essentially, Veronica's DQ fucked up the schedule right before the final. And Derek chooses Nehemiah, clearly for storyline purposes, where Wes is telling him to fuck Derek up since Derek called Nehemiah weak. Seeing Wes and Naya yelling at Nehemiah to fuck Derek up and chanting about it was hilarious to watch in my opinion. Light My Fire is the elimination where it's essentially a pole wrestle and they have to light it on fire with their cauldron. Nehemiah ends up rushing Derek, who is seen as the king of the pole wrestle for the most part, and this is thankfully the end of this weird feud, and it wasn't brought back on of the eras. Derek was loud this season when he wasn't like this before All Stars was a thing, so you could kind of see the desperation in him trying to turn it up for the cameras, which is odd. He did win a few mental stuff, so that's impressive for him. All of his antics on the spinoff ended up working since he's on 41, so props to him for that. They do the daily Wall of Fame right after the elimination, where they had to study a wall of photos. Jonay and Wes end up winning the daily, and Naya notices that Kayla is copying Naya's answers, with Naya and Brad getting last place. Despite all this, they are all going to the final, and TJ tells them that this was just to figure out the order and how they will start the final. So, pretty much that was that. Kayla does end up speaking to Naya about how her eyes glazed over a few times, and Naya called her out for seeing Kayla do this several times, where Kayla doesn't want to jeopardize their friendship. Naya says that they aren't friends, and she walks off. So you can clearly tell that Naya was holding back here, but she doesn't feel great about getting lost due to someone cheating. Kayla's argument is that why would she copy off someone that she ended up beating? That makes no sense to her. Wes and Kellyanne are grateful to end their journey on the show together like this, 10 years after their breakup, and Mike pretty much knows that he isn't winning due to his age. Janae speaks to her husband through the video call, and she is homesick, and Kayla feels alone regarding her alliance all being eliminated at this point. Naya and Nehemiah talk about helping one another once it gets to the final, and Wes is intentionally not staying up late and drinking the night before the final, like most of the cast, which is definitely smart on his part. The final does start with them running to get a key with their partners based on the placement, and then they have to get to the first checkpoint where they use the key to unlock the chains to create their boat and paddle it across the sea to another landing. They end up switching partners and riding their bike with their partner, and they are at the second checkpoint where they have to race 400 miles to see, or 400 meters, I don't know, whatever, 400 m to see which star in the rows are incorrect, where they have to unlock a box afterwards. They switch partners again and then have to race to see the tandem keys, and then they have to play King of the Hill on a floating dock, which is in reference to the first challenge TJ hosted on the Gauntlet 2. They switch pairs again, where they have to transport 100 pounds that are in bags to the next checkpoint. They then move on to the overnight portion, where they will stay on the yacht for the night, and we see everyone talking about their whys and their journeys on the season. We get to day 2 of the final, where Janae and Wes are in the lead, Naya and Nehemiah are second, due to Nehemiah's star, essentially. Stars, where the other 4 people have to fight in the final elimination to get to the final 2 spot in the final. They had to study every final location of the show that was on the wall in their house, so the final elimination has them having to solve a crossword puzzle of 10 on it. Kayla and Brad do end up beating Kellyanne and Mark here. As some things change over the years, other things stay the same, and Kellyanne not having the numbers is one of them. She was a rootable underdog through the season, and she was a lot calmer this season, but she still has some of that fire that's within her that was on her first 2 seasons. She does have a few more seasons after this, though I don't know if she will ever make it this far again, based on the trajectory that I am seeing. Mark talks a lot about his situation at home, and he had to win a few more eliminations this season, so he didn't coast to the end this time. He's the same as he always is, playing up the old guy stuff while keeping up with the others pretty well. But his performance in the final and the lack of endurance that he talks about over and over again throughout the season makes it clear to me that he will never win a modern season. The rest of the final is individual now, and they have to get to the yacht first of their dinner, where they have to run a lot. That is a simplistic way of putting it, but they then have to eat a bunch of gross food, solving a puzzle and another pyramid stack on a beach, and it ends up with Wes and Janae getting the win. The season, Kayla and Brad getting second place, and Nehemiah and Naya getting third place. Nehemiah was a lot more under the radar this season compared to how it was last season. While some of it was strategic on his part, I also do think that a part of it is due to his association with Wes and Wes just liking attention and taking up all the screen time and overplaying. Anyways, he did well enough and made it to a second final in a row. It got him back on the flagship show again, but he was a lot less obnoxious this season. Arguably, he's the man that All Stars helped the most overall. Naya made her grand return to the franchise with this, though I believe that they only did this because they wanted to help Jordan rehabilitate his image, but she proved that she grew and was more mature and made it to the final here, despite performing poorly in the dailies. Anyways, it caused her to be back in the rotation once again. Brad loses to West again on an individual season, just like he did on the dual one. He performed pretty well, strategically and competitively throughout the season, winning several dailies, never going into elimination, and kind of playing the middle between the two pairs. It is unfortunate that things somewhat took a downturn turn for him after this season, as I discussed somewhat on 40, but it will be more apparent next season. Kayla finally had a good season for the first time in a while, but I do think she brought a younger, Era 4-ish element to the show, which kind of caused for a weird feeling and dynamic to the season. And of course, her pettiness came with it. But you definitely got the vibe that she was getting over the show, and at least she ended with another solid season in her resume. A large part of me was very annoyed with Wes earlier on in the season, where his overproducing and contrived feud with Rias annoyed the hell out of me. But once that is all over with and he got more settled in, I did find him to be more enjoyable, and he wasn't trying to be the huge, obnoxious puppet master anymore. Overall, he had a solid win here. Journey was very close to MJ this season, which definitely got a lot of coverage and was kind of uncomfortable to watch at times, if I'm being honest. Having the whole bad thing happen to her was definitely screwed up, but this one was a lot better than her last one, winning 2 eliminations in several days. It's unfortunate that this will probably be her peak, though, when it comes to her challenge career. Okay, so now that I had to go over the notes to record this, well, after watching it for this recap slash review slash retrospective, I am definitely confident in the season being lower than All Stars 2. There really aren't as many memorable moments in comparison to the prior season, and I think you can even argue All Stars 1 as well has more entertaining moments, but it feels more modern compared to some of the other seasons in the spinoff. It's perfectly watchable, it's perfectly decent, you're still going to get something good out of the cast and the show, but it was clear that they needed to try something different if they wanted the show to last, and they could no longer just rely on the nostalgia of casting the OGs at this point, since one, some of them have been on like 2, 3 seasons at this point. Two, COVID was weakening, so a lot of the OGs who were unemployed weren't unemployed anymore when the future seasons came into place. And five, supposedly it wasn't helping much in the ratings on Paramount, so that's why they decided to move on to casting newer people. Anyways, we're going to talk about All Stars 4 hopefully next week, and then obviously we have to wait a few months until All Stars 5 finishes for me to talk about that. Thank you all for watching, and I'm almost done covering the challenge when it comes to the season, so I'm looking forward to it. Thank you. Take care.